Hey guys, welcome into Stacking Dubs. I'm your host, Chris Chinn, and I'm coming to you straight after the Warriors have their worst loss of the season. Get beat by the Brooklyn Nets, lose by 8 after leading by as much as 18 points in that second half. Just an absolutely brutal turnaround. And it felt very similar to the Spurs game where mid third quarter, I'm preparing my notes and getting ready to talk about a victory and looking ahead to this tough gauntlet of a schedule we have coming up. But at least we would have first be in first place in the West and have some momentum heading in. After all, it's just the Spurs and it's just the Nets, and we're up 17, 18 points respectively. But we see how it ended. The Warriors also were checking their podcast notes and taking their foot off the gas, throwing away sloppy passes, losing the points off turnovers battle, and more or less just letting another team get some hope into that end of the third, early fourth quarter, and then they catch fire and the defense clamped down. We actually dug in pretty well in the fourth quarter in this one. I thought defensively we made it tough on them, and it just didn't matter because when someone like a Dennis Schroeder and just you give these young guys some belief, and they start seeing some 3 pointers go down, it seemed like the Nets made their last like 15 shots. I think they scored 41 points in that fourth quarter. A lot of it was contested. Whatever the case, Warriors let them back in it, and then this is the NBA, right? Like everyone can make shots, and good offense beats good defense, and ultimately that's what happened in this one. Warriors could not get a stop down the stretch. We'll kind of look at what went wrong in this one, but ultimately, I think overall, just a team loss in this one. I don't think anyone played great except for maybe Moses Moody and Gary Payton II. Let's just kind of get that, yeah, the silver lining. I mean, Moody played great. I think he had 15 points in that first half, and then he barely played in the second half, did not play in the closing minutes. I don't really know. I mean, I do know Steve Kerr, he just thought we needed to get some stops. That's why he decided to close with GP2, who deserved to be in there. Pajemski, who actually played pretty well as well. Uh, but just nobody healed, no Moses Moody, no shooters to close this one. And when you're trailing by 6, 8, 9 points, I mean, yeah, I know you need to get stops, but you also need to start spacing the floor, shooting the ball. It just, I mean, it wasn't the reason we lost, but it's just an interesting way of thinking by for Steve Kerr. But it does let you know that Steve Kerr, like me, are missing D'Anthony Melton. Yeah, not having Melton as that point of attack defender, that was the problem in this one all night. The Nets, even from the beginning, Cam Thomas, while he was still in the game, just getting anything at will in that first half, 23 points before I don't even think he played in the second half. Cam Johnson just didn't even play in the second half. I think he got hurt, and the Nets were just playing a ragtag group led by Dennis Schroeder, who nobody can stay in front of. And when they did, he made tough shots, and it was a ton of fun. I felt like I was watching the Niners play again. We're not going to do this, but let's just say it's a low point for Bay Area fans right now after loss to the Spurs, Niners loss to the Nets. I for one just want to get this episode out there recorded. Let's cope and let's bounce back. The good news is we do have a big game against the Thunder on Wednesday. And while that seems daunting and not very not optimistic with how we've been finishing games, it is a chance to get right back into first place, get another good win under our belt, and just really right the ship. And we won't think about what happens if we are unable to win that game because the schedule only gets more difficult, tougher, and just exhausting. And that's my point, is that I don't know. I hate to say this, but it looks like the Warriors, despite being 12 deep, despite keeping minutes down, and despite Curry even sitting 3 games earlier in the season, they look to be running out of a little bit of gas towards the end of games. And I don't know if it's the legs, but it seems the focus, right? Like they get up, and I know it's not human nature when you get up, you kind of take your foot off the gas, but they're unable to kind of snap out of it. They're unable to really dig in and start playing with force again. You're doing the best you can. Steve Kerr tries to get some energy infused. He tries to, your energy guys, your GPs, your loons, your Pajemski, you get your Moody's, you're getting in, they're getting after it, but it's just not quite enough to jumpstart basically the starters who just really haven't had that spark in the last couple games. Steph Curry played, shot well, but I think he took 16 field goals in this one, and 15 of them were on threes. My biggest issue, I mean, Steph's doing fine, but he's really not getting anything inside the arc, right? Like when he's dribbling and he's off the dribble, attacking the hoop, he hasn't finished very well. Like I haven't really seen a crafty finish from Steph really in a few games. He's not really getting to a mid range. And most importantly, he's just kind of getting stuck, right? A lot of turnovers as he gets into the paint. Maybe it's because there's not enough spacing around him. Maybe it's because he's lost a little bit of athleticism to be able to kind of hang and buy himself time in either in the air and find someone to pass to, or maybe there's a finish that he can't quite get to with just a kind of diminished speed. Whatever the case, it's been a couple years now that Steph Curry's 2 point percentage has been a little bit down, and now you're starting to see some kind of more sloppy turnovers as he attacks the hoop, and I think it's still there, right? Like we saw it against Boston. We see it in the bigger games. Steph can still get it going, but in these games against, these November games against the Spurs, the Nets, the Pelicans, it seems like he's just kind of in second gear and not really turning it on. And then it's like, oh wait, we just blew a huge lead. We need me to get going. And the step back threes are there, but he's just not quite getting to the line enough. He's not getting to the hoop enough. And that goes for the Warriors in general. And I'm going to just keep going and tell you that I think that is the biggest problem and why the Warriors are blowing huge leads. It's been a problem the last couple years. It's the reason why you need a good number two. It's We're not getting downhill and we're not getting easy buckets. It's why Steve Kerr, when you see the Warriors get down 9-2 initially, right out the gate, call timeout. What does he go to? He goes right to Andrew Wiggins matchup against Cam Thomas or whoever the guard was at that point. He knows you just sometimes you can't overpass, you can't overthink things. You just need someone who's not named Steph Curry to just go exploit a matchup and win one-on-one. It's something Kuminga, you hope he could be that, but it's just not consistent enough. But at least he can get downhill pressure. And the Warriors missed Kuminga in the last couple of them just to kind of open things up and attack the hoop, especially with the Nets missing rim protectors. This would have been a Kuminga game. And I thought Wiggins did a good job trying to get downhill. And for the most part, he did. The Warriors got 50 points in the paint. So, I'm nitpicking because they scored 120 points, but it's just during those prolonged runs, if we're talking 6 to 8 minutes where the Warriors are not scoring a field goal, other team gets hot and you're blowing 17, 18, 31 point leads, and it's happening too often. The Warriors have thus far up until the last couple of games been able to escape and find ways to eke these out at the end, which shows their grit and their tenacity of this team. But I think that a little of that magic is going to kind of regress to the mean. Some of the high ball pressure, just the super intense defense, just trapping everything, playing with force. The Warriors have been playing with great force, great intensity, great activity all season long. And when they do, they look like one of the best teams in the league, and they've beaten some of the best teams in the league. But how sustainable is it? And that's the question that I think Dub Nation is trying to figure out, right? Like, how real is this team? You see greatness in spurts, but when the fatigue sets in a little bit, when you're not playing harder than the other team every play, when you're not playing with more force or more physical than the other team, you're not getting downhill, you're not getting to the free throw line, you're not making your free throws, which is going to be all season long. How can the Warriors have other options to win games? Andrew Wiggins has been great the last few games, and that's why we were able to get by the Pelicans and almost win these last couple. But let's be real, if Wiggins comes back down to earth a little bit, which is probably more likely than not, and Steph Curry isn't going to be, a hero every single night and pull you out of games, where are these points going to come from? I think we've seen Buddy Hield has started to cool off a little bit, and he still has some hot games, but I think we know that we can expect him to have off nights. There's too many holes on offense and that's why these droughts are happening, right? It's just your Pajemski, who played better tonight, and GP, who played well tonight, their inability to hit shots from the outside, it's really hurting the spacing, it's really hurting the offense. And you're just missing, again, you're missing a guy like Melton who can give you some two-way activity. You're missing just a you're missing Kaminga also, but you're just missing a better version of Andrew Wiggins or a better version of Kaminga. It's what you had hoped somebody like a Paul George would have given you, just someone that can ball handle from small forward, get you downhill, create off the dribble, get you to the line, just find you some easy points to stop the bleeding. So all that being said, the Warriors are still a strong team. You still see very good runs out of them. And I think just a little bit of focus is going to get them through most of these stretches. But I just worry as we get later in the season that you're going to see tired legs and the Warriors unable to just basically fight themselves out of these deficits against some of the bigger teams. Sorry, some of the top teams. And we'll see. Well, we have a big December coming up, right? We have the Thunder, we have the Suns. Then I think it's what the Nuggets, Rockets, Timberwolves, 3 out of the next 4 after that. Lakers sandwiched in there. I'm actually going to the Pacers game on the 23rd, the one game the Warriors aren't playing against a top 5 or 6 opponent. So hopefully that'll be a good win for us. But yeah, I think that's the biggest problem with the Warriors. And I know it's easy to point to, but it's just the lack of just somebody that can get you something downhill. And it's also just figuring out how sustainable the legs are. And when your depth isn't shining through, where all 12 aren't playing great, now you're playing 10 guys, and now legs are a little bit more tired. And now you're asking a whole bunch out of Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and Andrew Wiggins. Um, the Warriors defense, right? Like, I think the Warriors defense has been maybe the best defense in the league so far. I would call it a top 5 defense, but it's very effort based. Let's just look at Steph, right? Steph, I think on the season, his defensive rating's been like 105, and the Warriors are also like at a 105.8 before this game, which is like 4th in the league. So I think Steph Curry's defense has actually been not talked about enough because he's been great. But I worry that just that extra effort, just setting the culture, setting the tone this year. I think, whatever the Warriors did in Hawaii, they got everybody to play hard out the gate. I wonder if it's starting to take a little bit of a toll on those legs. Just the minutes are down, but everyone's playing so darn hard to rebound, play defense. Transition defense has been a sticking point, and just getting out and running that pace, right? Like, are the Warriors going to run themselves out of this season? It's been 16 games, and they're starting to show a little bit of wear and tear. Let's see if they can bounce back, because if they can't get some legs, they're going to have to make a move. Let's just kind of look at a couple names that have been being thrown around lately, just since we're on the topic. I think the big one is Dante DiVincenzo. Doesn't seem too happy in Minnesota. Would be a perfect fit instead of in taking place of Melton. Just can shoot, although he hasn't been shooting that well this year, but knows the system. Obviously, he's not going to be the defender that Melton was, but he at least gives you kind of a stretch guard, combo guard that can handle the ball, play make, and knock down some threes. That's just as weird as it is. The Warriors are still short a shooter now. Without Melton, you're having to play too many one-way players for defense, and just the shooting isn't there. So you got to find another two-way player. He wasn't great tonight, and he got hurt. But a lot of people have been talking about Cam Johnson on the Nets. I don't know. You probably have to give up Kaminga and some to get him. But those are just kind of two of the names that we're looking around, and I think both of those could be good additions. Just a two-way wing, two-way combo guard. Or lastly, you're looking at a smaller move, but you got to find some size with like a Kelly Olynyk, or just a big. I don't. The other one that I've kind of thought about throwing out, since we're just doing this right now, Vucevic on the Bulls. The defense is the problem, but offensively, he's exactly what the Warriors need. Someone who could pass, can shoot, can score, can rebound. But I think defensively, I don't know. Maybe I don't know if it's going to be worth just getting that stretch big to play 20 minutes a game kind of as that stretch, and then defensively he's not going to be finishing games because you're finishing with Dre's. I don't know if Vucevic is quite worth it. Miles Turner would be the dream. I don't know what it would cost to get him if he's going to be available. The Pacers are struggling right now, but obviously they were in the Eastern Conference Finals last year. If you can go get someone like a Miles Turner, now we're talking, right? A stretch who can also defend and give you rim protection. Those are the two things that the Warriors desperately, desperately need. And then Yeah, lastly, and I hear some of the Time Lord Robert Williams from the Blazers gives you a lot of rim protection. Doesn't it gives you a lob threat? He's kind of a glorified TJD, even more vertical, but he's always hurt. And that's the other problem here. And I don't think he's as good a passer as TJD, but that's just a small wrinkle in this. Okay. Well, where do we go from here? I guess I'm not going to harp too much on these losses. Let's just turn the page, chalk it up to just lack of focus and some kind of roster construction flaws. But I think what we're learning is that the Warriors, they're probably not a top 1, 2 seed in the West. I think when all said and done, you're going to kind of see them, be a top 4, top 5 team. I do think this team is definitely good enough to get straight into the playoffs, avoiding the play in. They're off to a great start already, and record wise, I think if you're what has it been Marcus Thompson was talking about the last like 2 years, if you're at this point in the season, if you're a top 5 or 6 team, like I think like 80% of those teams have remained in the top 6 for the rest of the season. So that bodes well for the Warriors. And even the lows of this Warriors team, they're still competing. They're still much better than they were last year, minus these terrible droughts. I think you see that the Warriors are definitely a more cohesive team. The defense is going to get them through games. Some getting hot from a little improved Andrew Wiggins, Buddy Hield can get hot. You're definitely a better version than last year, but I think that better version is probably call it 8 to 10 wins more than last year for the Warriors, and I think we're going to settle kind of into that hopefully 3 to 5 range is kind of what I think we're learning about this team. And if you want to be true contenders, then you're going to have to shuffle the deck just a little bit. But again, that's talks for another day. All right. Well, sorry guys, this was a rough one, and I just wanted to get a few of my early thoughts out here. My last thought is the starting lineup is not getting it done. We're getting off to way too many deficits out the gate. And I think the one good start we had recently was against the Spurs, and we ended up blowing that. But my point is I don't know what exactly needs to change with the starting lineup, but if you keep getting off to these slow starts, you might want to think about starting small with Dre at the 5. And it can be kind of like a quasi small where you're kind of going Dre at the 5 and then Kyle Anderson at the 4. So you're not completely small. And Kyle can kind of take some of the center assignments and let Draymond roam a little bit so he can save his body a bit. TJD just had not been great this year. And I know this lineups, they're still filling each other out. And he brings that shot protection behind Dre, which is the most appealing part of it. The lob threat, the pick and roll game, decent. But I don't know. Maybe it's as simple as the starting lineup. Steph needs to be more aggressive out the gate because there's just not enough offense in this lineup. Or maybe there just needs to be some changes. I think Lindy Waters for what it's worth has been fine as a starter. He's not Melton, but the defense has been solid. The shot making has been solid. He makes good decisions. He's just kind of a very solid, not gonna win or lose you a game for the most part, unless we're talking preseason buzzer beaters. So maybe with Moody's showing, maybe see a little bit more Moody. The other thing you could think about, and the reason why I brought up Draymond going small with Draymond at center is because when you do that, now you can potentially play Kuminga in that starting lineup, and maybe that's the jolt the Warriors need. I think, gun to my head, if I had to pick the lineup, that's if the Warriors you're gonna tell me the Warriors are contending, the lineup I think at the end of the year that you're going to find is going to be the most successful is Steph Curry at the 1, Pajemski at the 2, Wiggins at the 3, Kuminga at the 4, Draymond at the 5. I think those are our 5 best players. I know Pajemski's kind of been up and down and more so down, but tonight he was better. I think the shot will come around. And what I've realized with Pajemski is that he plays much better when Draymond's on the floor and Steph Curry's on the floor with him. Like they all know have very high IQ basketball. He's just kind of a force multiplier as our veterans. When he's connecting, he connects better players. It's like what Steph Curry does. So he elevates all other players around him. Pajemski does the same thing. Defensively, he's aggressive, especially off ball, but that works when you have Draymond also there because they know how to kind of rotate behind each other and cover each other. So I think that I'd like to see a little bit more Pajemski with that lineup, and I think Steve Kerr's been trying to get to that a bit more. But the shot needs to start falling because otherwise, that lineup is. eh, it's not enough spacing, but if Draymond's going to keep shooting 40% from three, if Kaminga's going to shoot threes with his feet set, you're not going to get quite the spacing and the respect from the defense, but you might get just whatever open threes you want in that within that lineup from Draymond, from a set Kaminga, from a Wiggins, even Pajemski, a set shot from three. Those are not bad shots. They're all going to shoot over 33% from there, which is the efficiency you're looking for, just a bit over it. So I could see a lineup like that working, but again, that's a little ways off because I don't think we're quite there yet in terms of Pajemski and Kaminga. All right, how to get this one out there, guys. We will talk again hopefully Wednesday night. Warriors coming off a win. We'll try to get one in before Thanksgiving. But if we don't, happy Thanksgiving to you and your families. But again, I will hopefully talk to you guys Wednesday night. I've been Chris Chinn. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, peace, love, and stacking dubs.